Hi there. My name is Paul Culmsee and I live in Perth, Western Australia and own a company called 7 Sigma Business Solutions. This is the second video in a short series where we're looking at the topic of powerful questions. This came about because I practice a particular visual facilitation technique known as dialogue mapping, and in the years that I've been practicing this, I've come to realize that there are certain questions, or maybe put better, there are ways to frame questions that always seem to lead to better outcomes than otherwise. So this is the second video in the series. The first video we looked at the platitude busting question. So sit tight and let's go and have a look at the next powerful question. Alright, here we are where we left off actually from the first session. The map is untouched from when I did the first recording, and I'll take you back through a quick recap because it's a quick opportunity to have a look at dialogue mapping, which is the idea that you can structure conversation, and you can see it looks similar to a mind map, but the basic elements are that you use a question node, an idea node, pro and a con, and there are some basic rules to when I use them, which is the subject of a future video. But if you look at the purpose of why we're here, and here is the question, why are we here, is to learn about powerful questions. And supporting this is the fact that learning about these questions increases the chances of breakthrough in complex issues, particularly with large groups of diverse stakeholders. And we also noted a counter argument that it might get you in trouble with your boss, but that was more of a facetious argument just to highlight this notation. And you can see how questions then arise from this. And the question that we're interested in, which is this one here, is okay, great, what are the powerful questions? And we spent the first workshop, or the first video, looking at the platitude buster question. Now, I did make one little change to the video, to this map, which was I made a little extra thing. Something I forgot to mention in the video was the fact that the platitude buster question has one really good thing going for it. It is also an excellent KPI question. KPI, in case you're not aware, stands for Key Performance Indicator. And a neat little feature of this software, by the way, if you look at that little star that's just appeared, that's the detail that helps with that particular acronym. So the reason it's a really great KPI question is already captured. So the platitude buster question, what are the benefits of asking the question this way? Well, answers tend to start with increase this or decrease that. These answers are inherently measurable. So if you find the compelling increased X or decreased this, or someone names their pain point in a really compelling way, well, you've got yourself a KPI. And particularly in project work, that's really, really handy because it really focuses people on what the core outcomes are. But that's enough on the platitude buster question. So what I'm going to do now is actually put that into its own little pigeonhole discussion on the platitude buster question, and we'll make some room on the map for our next powerful question. And one of the nice things about this particular software and this particular approach is its ability to chunk up the map so that the specific areas are still accessible, but you get a nice feel for the big picture. Alright, so what is the next powerful question? And it is this. It is the key focus area question. And I'll mark that in bold. So the first question that arises from this is, what is a key focus area? And the answer to that question is basically any element or aspect to an issue that is pivotal to delivering a successful outcome. Now the reason this is the case, or one of the key aspects, in fact I'm going to use the aspects question straight away. So one of the aspects to this point that I'd like to make is this: complex problems, or with a complex problem, the solution does not lie with any one person or expert. If there was one person that knows all of the answers, then it's generally not a complex problem. If there is an expert that thinks they know all the answer but can't get everyone to buy into that, then it probably is a complex problem, but the expert is not treating it as a complex problem. So the point is, with a complex problem, the solution does not lie with one person or expert. And there's a great quote by a guy named Horst Rittel years ago who said, there is a symmetry of ignorance where the expertise to solve a complex problem lies within and between stakeholders. So I guess that's the key aspect to why I like to pull out focus areas, and I like to do it with all stakeholders present. So with that in mind, let's ask ourselves what the question is. So what is the key focus area? Question? And it's basically this: what aspects to, and then insert problem or issue here, should we be considering? Now, that might seem like a straightforward enough question, and you might have used a question like that in sessions, but it's strangely enough, a lot of people don't. And the key part to it, I guess the key word, is my use of the term aspects. And the reason for that is this. So let me say benefits of asking the question this way. So the reason why I like the word aspects, or elements is another one, is that using the word aspects does not, or it has a neutral connotation. So has a or a neutral framing. That might be put better. And so essentially what I mean by that is, so supporting that is, if one was to ask what are the issues or what are the risks, then answers will be negatively framed. And the implication of doing this, or the side effect of doing this, if you like, is that this often, and what's the word I'm looking for here, this often does not allow valid opportunities to be discussed. So for example, someone might have a really great opportunity for improvement, but because you're asking people, well, what are the issues and what are the risks and what are the problems that we have, it's going to keep people focusing on the negatively framed thing. And in some organizations that have a blame culture, it almost is a recipe for them to not do anything at all, because the fear of blame is greater than the fear of actually taking advantage of an opportunity. But there's an equal and opposite view of this too. So another thing that supports this, why you should do things neutral, is that if one was to ask what are the opportunities, then answers will be positively framed. Now, appreciative inquiry people, please don't get too offended. The implication of this is basically the fact that you can get the all care, no responsibility effect. And what that basically is, in fact, I'll make that and I'll leave it there as the idea. There is a risk of groupthink, and groupthink is a term that refers to groups that have almost an immune mechanism to outside ideas, and they tend to shut them down. So, for example, a management team that says, only tell me the good news, that's a great example of groupthink. So if I said here, the pro, this all care, no responsibility effect, is you got a risk of groupthink because elephants in the room, using a lot of metaphors today, are not named. So, in case you don't know the term elephants in the room, basically it's a metaphor where you can put a group of people in the room and there's a great big elephant sitting in the corner, but no one mentions him, and everyone treats him as if this elephant is invisible. So in other words, there are certain unmentionables or certain problems that you're just not allowed to address, or there's this unwritten law that says don't mention this. That's an example of an elephant in the room. And so if you do positively framed questions, then often those elephants don't get named, and a lot of the time for breakthrough they need to be named. And so I find that for those two reasons I prefer to ask a question that is a lot more neutral. So I use the word aspects, a colleague of mine uses the word elements, but we seek to start out with an aspects word. And so if I then, another pro therefore is using a neutral framing invites a wider variety of viewpoints. And again, the key to dealing with complex problems is leveraging group wisdom. And if you're basically, if you go down this one and go risks and issues and basically freak people out, then you'll probably you can certainly scare people that the problem is insurmountable. But if you don't challenge opportunities, then you can get pie in the sky solutions that just aren't going to fly or won't fit within the boundaries of the problem. So hence, I like using the neutral framing that invites a wider variety of viewpoints. There is a couple of aspects to this, key aspects to this question. And these key aspects are really when facilitating. So a couple of things I've noticed to asking this question. One aspect is, or maybe the key aspect, is that the key focus areas tend to emerge as themes rather than being named up front. And so what I mean by that is discussion or identification of key aspects often surface recurring themes. The implication of this is this: the more a theme is either raised or consistently emerges, the more likely it is to be a key focus area. Okay. Now, let me show you how I actually capture that on a map. So if I say, how can this be handled when mapping? So although you can ask this question in any form of workshop, I find if you're using flip charts or if you're using software like what I'm using here, then there is a way of handling this. And the way of handling this is something like this. So let's just say I have a question. I'll have to do it as an example here for a second. What aspects of this problem should we be aware of? And I'll get a whole bunch of aspects. I'll get opportunities, I'll get risks. So here's an aspect, here's another one. Someone might frame it as a risk, someone might have an opportunity here. And before long, you'll have a whole lot of ideas. But what I often do with groups is I ask people to start to group these because that helps them to synthesize the various answers they're getting. And often each of these aspects will have its own map, much like I did earlier when I created a submap for the platitude busting question. So I will literally saturate each aspect into its own map. So if I show you, this is, I guess, the sort of archetype dialogue map for a discussion like that. And what I tend to do is once this conversation's been saturated, or once this particular aspect is being unpacked, the question I put is then, so what are the emergent themes? What are the themes that's come out of this discussion? And there'll be a theme or two named. And obviously for each aspect as it's discussed, I will do a similar thing. So what are the emergent themes from this aspect? And more often than not, sometimes it's the same theme. So for example, this risk aspect down here, if I asked the group for, so what's the theme? What are the underlying things that's screaming out at us as we've gone through this issue? And so someone might name that theme. It turns out that theme is the same as this one, and that's what you're looking for. This is an example of synthesis. This is where groups have unpacked issues and they're starting to see the commonalities between them all. These are your focus areas, not these. And that's the point I wanted to make. So when I say key focus areas tend to emerge as themes rather than being named up front, that's the conversational pattern that enables that to happen. So I'll leave that there as an example, just as a perhaps what is the mapping approach to handle emerging themes. So that can arise from this. But to summarize, how can this be handled when mapping? Map each aspect as they are discussed, but then ask the group to reflect on the key themes from that aspect. And then this synthesis of themes helps the group to understand the relationships between the key aspects. So let's put this here and let's see how it looks. So we've said, just to recap, and this map's getting big, so I'm going to chunk it up in a minute in the way I did before. So the question is this: what are the powerful questions? Well, now we have the key focus area question. What is a key focus area? Any element or aspect or sub-aspect to an issue or a problem that's pivotal to delivering a successful outcome. So what's the context, or what aspects are to this? In fact, I like context better here. So context to focus areas, and the context is this: with a complex problem, because the solution doesn't lie with any one person or expert, therefore key focus areas emerge from the dialogue of everyone, as everyone's claims and counterclaims are tested. And so therefore there is this symmetry of ignorance. No one person holds the answer, and therefore the themes emerge. The question, or the archetype question that I use, is this one. So I say what aspects to, and then you can put it whatever your problem is there, or issue, or strategy, or whatever you're trying to solve. The benefits of asking the question this way is the neutral framing of aspects. It invites a wider variety of viewpoints, and examples of this: if one person was to ask what are the issues or what are the risks, the answers will be negatively framed. The implication of this, that often doesn't have the opportunity for the positively framed opportunities to be discussed or raised. If then someone was asked to ask what are the opportunities, or positively frame the question. The implication there, it's the kind of the brainstorming effect, which is I'll give you lots of ideas, but I don't necessarily have to solve them. So that can be great for certain creative scenarios, but in complex scenarios you really do need to test things, and that runs the risk of elephants in the room not being named, and the conversations, and people can come out of that session feeling that the core issues were never truly addressed. So taking it back, the key aspects to this question when facilitating, just remember that the key focus areas tend to emerge, they're not up front, and so the way they emerge is via recurring themes. So as people examine aspects, it's the things underneath. A guy named Heifetz talked about the song beneath the words, so it's those themes that are lurking under the surface that need to be teased out. And so my advice there is that the more a theme is raised or consistently emerges, the more likely it is to be a key focus area for solving the problem. How can this be handled when you're mapping it? Well, map each aspect as it's discussed, but then once you've, saturated a particular aspect, ask the group to reflect on any key themes from that particular aspect. And it's the synthesis of these themes help groups understand the relationships between key aspects. And eventually you pretty much have here are the key things that we absolutely must nail. And from a strategic planning point of view, if we don't do this, we are not going to solve the problem. So what I'll do, just to quickly wrap up, is I will put this into its own submap as well. So now we have a discussion on the key focus area question. And as you can see, we're starting to build this this map nicely now. So now we're back up to the top level map, and you can see that now we're back to where we started. We've done the platitude buster question. We've now done the key focus area question. I have all the detail in here. Once again, if you would like to understand more of this sort of work, I have a blog called cleverworkarounds.com, which you can go and visit. You can also reach out to me on Twitter or look me up on LinkedIn. And if you look on there are some other videos on YouTube in relation to this dialogue mapping approach. So thank you for your attention, and we will see you next time.